How's it going, you guys? So I was just sifting through this book, Principia Ketogenica by A. Simmons. I bought this book a couple months ago. One of my friends recommended it to me. It's basically a large collection of various studies on low-carb and ketogenic diets, and it has sections for heart disease, neurological disorders, mental disorders, and a wide variety of different types of ailments. And it has hundreds and hundreds of studies listed with the abstracts as well, and obviously the actual study it's talking about. And so I kind of like to just go through and read the abstracts in the book and find the ones that I think are exceptionally interesting. Typically, the studies I use in my videos are not from this book, but I really love looking at the references in different books, and this book is basically just a book full of references. So anyway, you find a lot of interesting studies when you actually read the references of certain books. So a couple months ago, I ran into a case study on two schizophrenia patients who went into remission from their lifetime severe schizophrenia, and they were able to quit their medications altogether after being on a ketogenic diet for something like 2 years. And I think it was a 12-month follow-up, and they still were symptom-free and still in remission of schizophrenia with no medications, as long as they adhere to a ketogenic diet. And I thought that was interesting because I know that there is a lot of literature on neuroprotective benefits from a ketogenic diet, and specifically ketogenic diets being used clinically for so-called neurodegenerative or neurological disorders. I also found quite a lot of evidence, a couple studies actually, on bipolar disorder, and reading through Reddit and different forums, I found a whole lot of people that found success with a ketogenic diet for depression, anxiety, and bipolar disorder. And not to mention the case studies that I found on schizophrenia that were actually pretty new. They actually just got released this year. Now, coming through this book, I see another case study. This case report includes a review of the literature on schizophrenia, so that you can kind of see some supporting evidence. And it's called Schizophrenia, Gluten, and Low Carbohydrate Ketogenic Diets, a case study, a case report, and review of the literature from 2009. Okay. Mind you, there's quite a few of these case reports that have came out, including one from two people in 2019. So here's the abstract. The case study follows a 70-year-old woman diagnosed with schizophrenia, paranoia, disorganized speech, and hallucinations, including seeing skeletons and hearing voices that told her to hurt herself since childhood. A typical day's diet was egg and cheese sandwiches, diet soda, water, pimento cheese, barbecued pork, chicken salad, hamburger helper, macaroni and cheese, and potatoes. So that was her normal diet. So they put her on a ketogenic diet of less than 20 grams of carbs a day, consisting of unlimited meat and eggs, 4 ounces of hard cheese, 2 cups of solid vegetables, and 1 cup of low-carb vegetables per day. After just over a week, she was no longer hearing voices or seeing skeletons. There was no change in medication. After 12 months, she had no reoccurrence of hallucinations, had lost over 10 kilograms, and experienced improvements in the energy level. Even with 2 to 3 isolated episodes of dietary non-compliance that lasted several days, where she ate pasta, bread, and cakes, there was no reoccurrence of hallucinations. So again, this is called Schizophrenia, Gluten, and Low Carbohydrate Ketogenic Diets, a case report and review of the literature from 2009. You can Google search that and find the actual study yourself. This is not the only case report or the only study done on people who've gone into remission or found significant improvement in their mental issues on a ketogenic diet. You know, one thing that I find interesting is throughout most of my life when I was struggling with mental illness myself, I never once really looked into nutrition, not until I thought I had a heart attack or I had heart disease when I developed hypochondria. And when I finally got my diet on check, okay, it took years of studying nutrition before I finally found what works for me. When I finally started eating the diet that I'm eating now, a ketogenic / low carb diet, high in protein, high in animal protein, high in animal fat, and pretty low in plant foods, I realized, holy crap, like, this is like turning on a switch. It's like, it's completely changing everything about how I perceive life. And when I was eating carbohydrates, it was a completely different ballgame. Another thing is I tried a variety of different diets. If you've been following me for a long time, you know I tried vegan, Mediterranean, you name it, paleo, etc., etc. One thing I can definitely say is eating more than 100 grams of carbohydrates is pathogenic. And mind you, I'm a pretty extreme athlete. I do powerlifting 4 to 6 times a day. And then I also do MMA 4 to 6 times a day on top of that. I live a very active life and I ride bikes on a regular basis. It's not like I'm just, I don't even need carbs, I found, which I thought was interesting. I noticed the more protein I have in my diet, the better I feel overall. And when you switch from running on carbs to running on ketones and fatty acids and amino acids, when you switch to running on fats as a fuel source and you keep your carbs super low, you have this grounding of the mind, this grounding of energy, this amazing control over your mind and body that you never thought was possible. You never knew it existed. You always thought it was normal to feel ups and downs in your energy throughout the day, feel irritated and agitated if you haven't eaten. A ketogenic diet completely changes that. You have unlimited energy throughout the day. Your sleep is better. Obviously, you lose body fat no matter how much protein and fat you're eating. It's pretty insane, and it's very hard to eat more protein and fat than you need because of its effects on hunger hormones. Anyway, it's an extreme change in your metabolism, and I think that human beings were probably meant to be in ketosis most of the time. There's a lot of people that believe that, some of our ancestors ate carbs, this and that. In the modern times, people eat so much carbohydrates in our modern times, it's no wonder that we're experiencing so many different diseases. I think the ketogenic diet is a great reset for people with mental health issues and a great reset for people with all sorts of health issues. Anyway, one of the main mechanisms that a ketogenic diet might have on improving depression and even something like schizophrenia is that people with schizophrenia tend to have overactive glutamate. And ketogenic diets actually increase GABA, which is a neurotransmitter in your brain, which is a neurotransmitter that calms you down. GABA is actually the anti-stress neurotransmitter. GABA is the antagonist of glutamate, and so it's neuro-calming, whereas glutamate is neuro-excitatory, and that's why people with schizophrenia tend to be manic. They tend to have a hard time sleeping. Essentially, their neurons are so overactive from all this glutamate stimulation that it causes their brain to literally short circuit and trip out. Essentially, that's what you can think of it as. And so ketogenic diet raises GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that lowers glutamate significantly. It's literally the anti-hero of glutamate. And it calms down whatever overactivity and overstimulation of the neurons might be in place. So obviously people with epilepsy, that glutamate and GABA tends to play a role, and ketogenic diets are used clinically for epilepsy. Alzheimer's, same thing. Well, actually, that's more of insulin resistance of the brain. But ketogenic diets have a wide application on a number of mental health issues, which seem to be drastically influenced by neurochemistry, particularly excitatory neurotransmitters like dopamine, adrenaline, and glutamate. So when you upregulate GABA, whether you're using theanine or taking exogenous GABA supplements or magnesium or ketogenic diets or exogenous ketones, MCT oils, etc., it calms your neurology down, and it allows your brain to rest, relax, your neurons to rest and relax, and it upregulates brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is also responsible for building new neurons and managing a healthy brain. So also there's many studies that show a reduction in reactive oxygen species in the mitochondria when on a ketogenic diet. So essentially less oxidation or less inflammation is what people say. It's anti-inflammatory because it reduces the damage that glucose typically would do on a standard diet. And ketones are actually antioxidants on their own, and they actually produce an antioxidant-like effect on the body, which is why so many people experience remission in their chronic pain and all sorts of other issues on a ketogenic diet. So anyway, go ahead and look at the studies for yourself. I'll post the case reports down below, and one of them might actually just be a review article from Psychology Today, because the actual study that the article was written about originally, I believe they actually made the case report private. And so the review article on Psychology Today, which is a well-respected psychology website, is still up, and it explains the study. It basically it's basically a review of the actual study. But the actual study itself seems to have gone private for some reason. But I've seen the actual study, and I can tell you that the review article is legit. Other than that, the actual study that I was mentioned in this book, from this book, it is up as far as I know still. So I will link them down below, and subscribe to me for more videos about this in the future as I find more evidence. And I'll be talking a lot more about how you can heal and treat diseases using nutrition and herbs. Well, always talk to your doctor, obviously. This is not a replacement for medical treatment, and I'm just giving my opinions and my sharing my knowledge. So I'm not advocating or recommending anything. Everything you do is up to yourself. Yeah, leave your questions and comments down below. Let me know what y'all think, and I'll talk to you on the next video.